They said I was born to rule. They said I was the last queen, who would lose empires and leave only a shadow behind. But no one asked me who I really was. Was I just a puppet in the game of great men? Could I have been more? Now I will tell you the truth that is hidden in history. I did not seek power. It came to me like a storm when I was a child. My world was not one of illusions about a throne adorned with jewels, but a ruthless game where every step could be my last. They called me queen, but few saw what lay behind that title: a cold determination and an uncompromising struggle. My reign began when I was only 18. My father, Ptolemy XII, had left me the throne, but with weak authority and widespread rebellion. My younger brother became co-ruler, but the real struggle for control of Egypt was just beginning. My first step was unexpected for many. Instead of waiting for a decision in the palace, I went out to the people. I met with priests, officials, even ordinary merchants on the streets of Alexandria. I wanted to show Cleopatra is. At the same time, I began to strengthen my position in the army. I knew that without the support of the military, the throne was just a pretty picture. I personally supervised the recruitment and training of soldiers and often visited the training ground, where I demonstrated my will. They say that I was not afraid to stand among the soldiers, as if one of them, and this is true. At that time, Egypt was threatened on all sides. Internal conspiracies among the brothers, mobs of cruel supporters of Rome reaching for our riches, and disruptions in the grain supply that could cause famine. I didn't wait for someone to decide my fate. I started trading grain myself, negotiating with local merchants, and even sending my own ships to deliver supplies to the ports. My mind worked at full speed. I set conditions that sometimes seemed unbearable, but I knew that it was thanks to them that the country stayed afloat. When rumors began to spread in Alexandria that I was betraying Egypt's interests by working with Rome, I did not remain silent. I personally convened a council of elders, inviting representatives of different strata of society to it, and addressed them with the words that our strength lies in unity, not in war. It was both a challenge and a demonstration of my confidence. While many believed that a woman on the throne was just a puppet, I was already preparing a large-scale political move. I began to build secret connections with influential Roman generals, realizing that without the support of a powerful ally, Egypt would not be able to hold out. And then he came, Julius Caesar. Not by chance, but as part of my strategy. I took a risk, coming to him not as a subordinate, but as an equal. With freshness and cunning, I did what was thought impossible, gain his respect and trust without losing face. Our alliance was not just a political move. It was a demonstration of strength that could break down any barrier. I didn't expect Caesar to save me. I made him see me as an ally, not an enemy. I remember how, after this meeting, many in Rome began to whisper that the Queen of Egypt was not just a woman, but a terror to their ambitions. I did not object, because that was exactly what I wanted. As Rome's influence deepened, I strengthened internal control over the country. I rebuilt the army, expanded the navy, and modernized the financial systems, all to prepare Egypt for the storm that was coming. I knew that my future and that of my country were not tied to dreams, but to actions. I didn't wait for others to define my role in history. I created it myself. They thought I was just an heiress, that the crown would fall on my head by itself. They were wrong. I showed them that power is not a gift, but a victory won with blood and intelligence. When my father, Ptolemy XII, died, the real battle for Egypt began. My right to rule was questioned even within my own family. My brothers, Ptolemy XIII and Ptolemy XIV, were already plotting, and court intrigue filled the palace like a poisonous fog. I was not just a young woman on the throne. I became a leader who had to lead the state when there was chaos around. Then I made the first important move. I made an alliance with the elders and priests to consolidate my authority. They understood that without my support their influence would decrease, so I got the support I needed. My brothers did not expect me to act decisively. They began to plot, and even tried to expel me from the palace. But I did not hide. I created my own guard of loyal soldiers who knew that I was not just a queen, but the only hope of Egypt. One night, when they dared to launch an open coup, I personally led the defense of the palace. We fought to the last drop of blood, and I won. Then it became clear Cleopatra would not retreat before anyone. But internal enemies were not the only threat. Rome, in turmoil after civil wars, threatened my country. I knew that only a strong ally would help preserve the throne. Then I took the most unexpected step. I went to Rome alone. In my hands was not just political diplomacy, but the skill of a woman who understands that the world is ruled not only by swords, but also by words, charm, and wisdom. In Rome, I was met with suspicion and distrust. A woman from Egypt, claiming power? Is that possible? But I did not let them underestimate me. I entered the world of great men with the confidence that I would change their minds. The meeting with Julius Caesar was the culmination of my diplomacy. I arrived in the chamber, fearing neither his power nor his reputation. I was there not as a subjugated person, but as an equal, ready to negotiate. We talked about the future, about the survival of my country, and I knew that this meeting would change everything. It was the beginning of an alliance that gave me the strength and resources to hold on to the throne. Upon my return, I immediately began to use this alliance to its full potential, rebuilding the economy, strengthening the navy, and encouraging trade. I knew that without a powerful army and wealth, my rule would not last long. But even with Rome's support, internal enemies were not asleep. My brothers did not retreat, and later began to openly oppose me. Then I resorted to the last and most decisive step. I forced them to share power, but clearly secured the main role for myself. This step was like balancing on a knife edge. One wrong move, and everything could turn into a disaster. But I knew how to keep my balance, and my country felt it. I learned to wield not only the sword and the pen, but also the fears, ambitions, and hopes of men. I was not just a queen. I was the heart and mind of a great empire on the brink of change. They thought I would give in, like the others do. But I was not like that. When my brother Ptolemy XIII returned with the support of enemy advisors and an army, a real war began, not in words, but in blood and fire. My brother and I, once close, had become mortal enemies. He wanted the throne for himself and would stop at nothing to destroy me. The palace had become a trap where every step could be the last. Intrigue and betrayal had engulfed every corner of Alexandria. Even my sister, Arsinoe, was not on my side. She opposed me, wishing to increase her own influence and undermine my power. I will never forget how she once dared to enter into a conspiracy with her brother, and this was not just a family betrayal, but a deadly one. I knew that to survive, I had to act quickly and decisively. I couldn't rely solely on old allies or hope for the mercy of my enemies. I took control of the fleet and the most loyal troops. It was I who began to organize the defense of the city and strategic strikes on enemy positions. My command left no doubt. I was not only a queen, but also a military leader. I remember the day my troops took control of the Musa fortress, a key point of defense for Alexandria. It was a risky maneuver, but it put us in a winning position. My brother was shocked. He had underestimated my strength. The conflict grew, and eventually I took the most unexpected step. I turned to Julius Caesar for help. This choice was the moment that changed the course of the struggle and my destiny. Caesar arrived with the Roman legions, and together we began a siege of Alexandria that lasted for months. The city burned. War was fought for every stone, every house. I was with the troops, supporting my people, strengthening the walls, and giving hope to those who already thought we were doomed. During the siege, terrible events occurred. Hundreds of innocent people died, and even part of the legendary library of Alexandria was damaged in the flames. It was a terrible time, but I knew only victory would save Egypt. When Ptolemy XIII died in battle, his death brought me no joy, only a bitter mixture of victory and loss. The struggle for the throne was over, but the war for the hearts and minds of the people continued. My political helm had strengthened, but I knew there was no room for weakness in this world. My sister and the rest of my enemies were still waiting for the right moment to attack. I forced Arsinoe to flee the country, made her understand that my power is unshakable. This battle taught me one thing. Power comes at the price of constant struggle, and those who are not ready to fight are doomed to lose everything. They said I was just an attractive woman who seduced a powerful Roman. They didn't see that this alliance was an explosive mix of politics, strategy, and the struggle for survival. When Caesar came to Alexandria, I knew it wasn't just a meeting of two personalities. It was my opportunity to restore Egypt to the glory and power that was its right. We talked for hours about peace, about war, about a future I saw differently than others. I didn't let myself forget. This was not a romance, but a partnership that could change the fate of empires. I was not afraid to show my strength, my independence. I did not come to obey. I came to rule. Caesar sensed this, and it made us allies, not enemies. Together we organized the restoration of power. I took the throne again, now with the support of Rome, and he gained control of the strategic grain routes. However, even with such powerful support, my enemies did not retreat. My alliance with Rome aroused envy and intrigue. Betrayals and attempts to weaken my rule awaited me. I was forced to learn to play politics even harder. I renewed intelligence, intensified diplomacy, negotiated with everyone from priests to Roman senators. And then came the moment when my life intersected with the fate of Mark Antony, another great Roman general whose ambitions and passions became both a challenge and an inspiration for me. But more about that later. Now my task was to keep Egypt alive and powerful in a world where empires rose and fell. I began to reform the army, focused on developing the navy and restoring trade. It was difficult. My every step was monitored, every decision was criticized, but I didn't back down. My rule became increasingly ambitious and harsh, and I knew that to stay at the top, I would have to keep fighting, not just for the throne, but for the hearts of my people. When Mark Antony came into my life, I was ready to believe the best. His eyes burned with fire, and I wanted to believe that it was the fire of love, not just a lust for power. But very quickly, dark shadows of doubt began to fall on our union, and they did not give me peace. From the first days of our meeting, I noticed shaky moments, how his attention was distracted from me, how he often preferred political games to real intimacy. His words sounded tender, but his heart remained cold as marble. He spoke about me with passion, but I felt that this passion was more of a show, a game, a mask behind which the real Antony hid, a man who loved power more than anything. The longer we were together, the more I witnessed his duality. He could stare into my eyes and speak of eternal love one day, and the next day he would be discussing plans with the senators of Rome that betrayed our alliance and my interests. Suspicions grew. I began to notice his meetings in the shadows, secret letters that he hid even from me. It was clear that his heart belonged not to me, but to ambitions that amounted to power over Rome and the world. One evening, when I returned to the palace after a long council, I noticed that the door to my room was ajar. My guard, tired and agitated, whispered that there was an unexpected meeting in the hall, that a conspiracy was brewing. That was the first alarm bell. I felt a shadow of distrust and danger covering everything around me. From that moment on, I began to watch him more closely, not just as a queen watches her husband, but as a politician watches a possible enemy. Adding to the tension was the gossip circulating among my courtiers, that Antony saw me only as a tool, a way to consolidate his power and legitimize his ambitions before Rome. It broke my heart, but I had to live with it. Because my role is to survive and protect my people, even if in this fight I have to be colder than I ever imagined. On the night Rome threatened to break our alliance, I met him alone. He came not as a lover, but as a general and a politician. I saw in his eyes a coldness that could not be hidden by any gesture of smile. "Cleopatra," he said, "we are not playing at love, but at empire. I am not here to love, but to rule." These words fell on me like ice. My heart was breaking, but I showed no weakness. I answered him with cold confidence. "If you want the throne, it is in my hands. But I will not be a shadow or a tool of your ambitions." He smiled, but it was a cold smile, and I realized that there was no real love between us. There was only a game, and each of us was risking everything we had. The following months were filled with political games, secret negotiations, and suspicions. We shared the throne together, but each held his own cards up his sleeve. I was his partner, but at the same time his most vigilant rival. My faithful people said that I had lost myself, that love had changed me, but it had not. But I knew that was not so. I kept my cool, because I understood that not only my life, but the fate of the entire country depended on it. When Rome began to threaten my power, I realized that my personal feelings had to take a back seat. I had to be queen until my last breath, regardless of whether Antony loved me or not. I used this alliance to strengthen Egypt's position, to provide for the people and preserve the culture that has been the heart of my country for centuries. This was my war, not just for the throne, but for the right to be a powerful woman in a world that wasn't used to seeing us that way. And although it was a fierce struggle, I don't regret a single step I took, because I am Cleopatra, and I will never allow the authorities to be cold, even if I have to play a game without feelings. I knew the end was near, not because I feared death, no, but because the world I had created and protected was crumbling. The enemy was at the threshold, and all those who had once honored me now sought to erase my name from the memory of mankind. The Roman army was advancing. Mark Antony was defeated, and I was the last hope of Egypt. My heart was torn between the pain of losing my beloved and the weight of fate that lay on my shoulders. In recent days, I have realized that I cannot hold on to power with the power of the sword or words. I must choose another path, a path that will make me a legend, one that will transcend death. I was surrounded by enemies and traitors, but in my soul burned a spark of steadfastness. I was a queen until my last breath. My end is not a defeat. It is the last act of a great game in which I was not just a player, but a creator. I left life the way I lived it, with dignity and strength. Historians have written about me as a woman who seduced emperors and destroyed empires. But I know the truth. My story is much deeper, more complex, and more beautiful. They wanted to forget me, to make me just a myth, a fairy tale for children, and a flight of political intrigue. But I became eternity. My name lives in the hearts and minds of those who seek strength, wisdom, and freedom. For I am Cleopatra, and even in death I hold the throne.